To peat or not to peat? That is the question. For hundreds of years, the people of the Kodiak archipelago have fertilized their gardens with beach peat. They would cast their dories and skiffs upon the waves with the intention of filling them to the gunwales with seaweed and kelp. They would haul this bounty up the beaches and into their gardens, where they would plant cabbages, turnips, and potatoes. This springtime tradition continues to this day, as many locals still use beach peat to fertilize their gardens. Experimentation with crops has been important in the Kodiak archipelago for a long time. In the 1800s, Russians planted oat fields on Woody Island, and in the early 1900s, Kodiak Experiment Station at Calson Bay analyzed Kodiak soils. Native Kodiak soils provide poor growing conditions for cultivated crops. Their soils are shallow, highly acidic, and lack many of the basic nutrients necessary for crop growth. There is little organic matter present, and most areas have a high volcanic ash content. One obstacle for agriculture in the archipelago is how remote many communities are. Kodiak Island is accessible only by air or water, which makes bulk importation of materials such as fertilizers difficult and expensive. It also makes export of products off-island difficult and in many cases not economically viable, so most land-based agricultural production from Kodiak is used locally. As part of a 3-year statewide Alaska soil health project funded by the National Resources Conservation Service, the Kodiak Soil and Water Conservation District tested the use of beach peat as a soil supplement and long-term enhancement to Kodiak native soils. Project goals included demonstrating the effect of locally available materials on soil health, as well as increasing awareness and use of practices to enhance soil health by local agricultural producers. Beach peat is seaweed that has been ground down by wave action, partially decomposed and dried out, and found on beaches at or above high tide line. When used as a cover during the winter, seaweed or beach peat can be very beneficial. Applied in a thick layer over the soil in the fall, it will protect overwintering plants and slowly decompose, releasing nutrients. In spring, it is generally turned into the soil, but can also be left on the surface if one is using no-till farming methods. Seaweed and kelp can also be added to compost bins to help supplement their nutrient composition. Beach peat is found on beaches in spring and after winter storms have pounded the previous year's seaweed. It can be directly applied, but is generally allowed to weather first for a short time to rinse off the salt before use. Kodiak Soil and Water Conservation District Soil Health Test Project ran from 2016 to 2018, with additional testing of kelp farm waste from local kelp farms in 2019. Beach peat was gathered in the spring and left out in the rain and weather to rinse out the salt. Soil was thoroughly mixed before adding dividers to separate beds into plots. Dividers extend down to weed block material at the bottom of the beds, about 9 inches. Soil samples were collected for testing. 3 samples were taken per plot, mixed in a bucket, and 2 Ziploc bags full were saved per plot. 1 for analysis, and 1 as a spare in case the other got lost in the mail. Soil samples should contain an even mixture of soil down to the approximate depth of the maximum reach of plant roots. For the study, soil samples were taken twice per year, first in the spring before the application of beach peat, and second immediately after harvest. Spring pre-planting soil tests are most common and are used to determine what is lacking in the soil for proper plant growth. A simple fall soil test is used to determine if lime should be applied to counteract soil acidity. Beach peat was added at a rate of about 3 to 5 pounds per square foot. This translates as a layer of approximately 6 to 12 inches deep on the soil surface. Local Kodiak greenhouse and nursery Strawberry Fields donated red sales lettuce plants to the project. Kodiak master grower Judy Hamilton is shown with the baby plants. Red Sales variety was used because of availability at the beginning of the first year's planting. 3-week-old Red Sales lettuce seedlings were used. Direct sowing of seeds results in harvestable plants in nearly the same time frame with less hassle. This view shows the garden in 2016 ready for harvest. Bird nets were added after magpies attacked seedlings. Beware the magpies and crows. For the test project, plants were harvested with roots on and weighed to measure total biomass. This is an overhead view of a test plot with no beech peat added and a test plot with beech peat. This is the only difference between the two. They were treated equally throughout the growing season. Of course, every scientific project has its issues, but over the 4 years of testing, none of the external variables seem to make any difference in the outcome of the experiment. In 2017, a crop of cabbage was planted after the lettuce was harvested. The cabbages in this picture were harvested from the plots with added beech peat. The cabbages in the no beech peat plots never produced heads. The produce from all 4 years of the project was donated to the Kodiak Island Food Bank for distribution. Our preliminary results showed increased organic content aids moisture retention and buffers soil acidity. Beech peat also adds active nitrogen to the soil, as well as macronutrients and micronutrients. We also discovered a possible addition of plant growth hormones. However, this was not tested in the study and would require further research. Soil infiltration tests the ability of the soil to allow passage and retention of water. In the beech peat plots, the water quickly ran into the soil. In the no beech peat plots, the water would puddle on the soil's surface and take much longer to soak in. During the hot, dry summer of 2017, the plots were watered daily. In the evening, the plots still retained moisture from the morning watering, but the plots without any peat were dry. Gardeners make kelp tea by soaking seaweed in fresh water and applying it as liquid fertilizer. This removes any of the physical properties of the added seaweed and suggests that there are additional reasons for increased growth. Nutrients may also be responsible. This short list shows some of the major micro and macronutrients that were boosted by 3 years of seaweed application. There are 2 kinds of soil acidity: active and reserve, or stored. Active pH is that seen by a plant's roots, and it is one measured in a standard soil test. Reserve pH is stored in the soil. An active soil pH of 6.2 or lower will chemically lock up nutrients and make them unavailable for plant use. The addition of neutral or slightly alkaline seaweed or beech peat raises the general soil pH by boosting the organic content and reducing the reserve acidity in the soil. Soil grows acidic during the growing season by the action of plants absorbing nutrients, so the slightly lower pH of peat plots was caused by the greater plant growth and will be corrected by the addition of peat in the spring. In a normal garden or farm with pH this low, lime should be added. Though the nitrogen cycle is too complex to discuss here, the nitrate and ammonium measurements were taken after harvest, so the nitrate level is much higher than the ammonium level due to plant activity during the growing season. The takeaway is that the beech peat added a significant amount of nitrogen to the soil. A busy graph, but the takeaway is that significant amounts of nutrients were added by the beech peat, green bars, plant growth in the no peats plot caused the depletion of phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, and boron. The addition of rinsed beach peat slightly raised the levels of salt in the soil, but in the open beds it was eliminated over the winter. It never reached a level of concern. Note that in spring 2018, salt levels in the beach peat beds had fallen to nearly that before the first application of beach peat in spring 2016. In fall 2018, levels had risen again, both from the addition of beach peat and the plant growth during the season. Care must be taken to remove salt from seaweed used in closed beds or hoop houses. Soil is not considered saline when it is below 0.8 micromoles per centimeter. A range of 0.81 to 1.6 is safe for all plants. When beach peat was analyzed as compost, the carbon to nitrogen ratio of beach peat was similar to that of an actively decomposing material such as chicken manure or biosolids. The main difference is that seaweed lacks urea, which is present in manure and is used in commercial fertilizers to boost nitrogen. The pH of beach peat is slightly alkaline, which helps reduce soil acidity. Boron levels in beach peat are high. Though root plants use this, it can be toxic to some plants. This would be difficult to reach with regular application of beach peat, but in a closed system such as a hoop house with little fresh water rinsing, it may become an issue. And so, Kodiak residents will continue to utilize our local beach peat to improve our soils and enjoy our garden's harvest.